Matt Crumpton isn't, but he knows more than almost anybody alive. Matt Crumpton, thanks for joining us. It's an auspicious anniversary, although I'd like you to tell me if it's being treated as such in the United States. Seems to me auspicious, but I can't say I've been overwhelmed by the amount of publicity that I've seen about it. So is it being treated as a big deal? If not, why not? And what are the prevailing opinions amongst the American people now, 60 years on, about the killing of Kennedy?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, George. I really appreciate it. I've been studying this case for a long time, and I've put a lot of hours into it. But I would say by no means am I, the authority. I think I'm dipping my toe into the game, and I'm honestly honored to be able to, have as big of a platform as I do to explore trying to figure out what happened. You know what I mean? So, and to answer your question, is it being treated like it's a big deal in the United States? I would say it is. But how big of a deal? It's kind of hard to say. There's that. I want to come back to that point about sort of how the media is now. Also you got to remember it's Thanksgiving, so and media is so fragmented now. It's like I bet a lot of people, there will be stories about it in mainstream media. There's a story on Fox News today. There's a story on MSNBC. There are stories about it, but I don't think there's real in-depth coverage. And again, people are traveling for Thanksgiving and stuff. So in terms of the overall perception, a Gallup poll just came out about this last week, a new Gallup poll for the first time, I think, in about 10 years. And 65% of Americans believe that there were others involved aside from Oswald. That doesn't speak to whether Oswald himself was involved, but whether or not there's, a shot from the front, essentially 65%. Only 29% believe that it was Oswald alone. This is a Gallup poll. So, but ultimately the media in the United States has been turning, and it started last year on Morning Joe. This is around the same time when Tucker had the thing where he had an insider who said that, the CIA did it. I think on the same day, Michael Beschloss, the NBC historian, was on Morning Joe talking about Oswald's CIA and FBI connections, and he was talking about it as if it had something to do with these documents that had just been released the previous day. They made it sound like there was some big discovery. There wasn't, but they just suddenly decided to start covering something that hadn't previously really been discussed. So you have that plus the Paul Landis thing going on, the Secret Service agent that says he found the full bullet, and that got a lot of coverage on NBC. In the past that would have just been ignored. And then the movie JFK What the Doctor Saw was allowed to be shown on Paramount Plus. That's a film that I'm in. And I don't know if there's distribution on that in the UK yet, but I'm sure it'll be coming out everywhere at some point. So it's and also you have Who Killed JFK, the Rob Reiner, Soledad O'Brien podcast that I think has a conclusion on the side of, being a Warren Report critic or conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, but that moniker has less and less weight as more and more things turn out to have been a conspiracy. But let's not go there. Let's stick to this particular one. The points that you made well, but 65% saying that Oswald didn't act alone, of course, begs the question, was Oswald involved at all? Or was he the patsy that he said he was, a big palooka that was manipulated by others cleverer than him? Why was he then shot dead? Why were the law enforcement officers allowing him to be shot dead before we could hear anything further, before he could be put on trial? And the bullet from the front, and it seems overwhelmingly likely that there was a shot from the front, from Zapruder onwards. It's overwhelmingly likely that there was a shot from the front. Ipso facto establishes that there were at least two people involved, which is, don't need to remind you as an attorney, constitutes a conspiracy when two or more people are involved in a criminal act. I'm a little surprised it's only 65%, but within that 65, is opinion hardening, as our poll seems to show, that it was the CIA that did it?
Yeah, I mean, I think opinion is hardening to some extent, I would say. But the challenge is this case is so complex. And a lot of times what happens is someone will look at all the information and they'll go, hey, I think there was a conspiracy. I think the CIA did it. And that might be true. Okay. But you kind of have to show your work in this case, because there are critics that have studied this and they come with receipts. And if you don't know what you're talking about, then it's very easy to go, oh, wow, maybe the CIA didn't do it. But there's counterpoints to all their points is the thing. So that's what my podcast, Solving JFK, does, is we look at the arguments of each side. I think, people like Oliver Stone and my co-author on the new book that I just wrote, JFK Assassination Chokeholds, Jim DiEugenio, guys like that, they do a good job of advancing the Warren Report critic cause, but they're not going to lay out necessarily every single argument. Although DiEugenio does in his book, Reclaiming Parkland, he kind of lays out the Bugliosi arguments. But I want to get to your 2 points that you raised. Oswald, what was Oswald's role? Okay. There's 2 questions. Was Oswald involved, and did Oswald fire a shot? Regarding him firing a shot, my answer to that question in season 1 of the podcast, we looked at it, and I think the answer is no. I don't think he fired a shot. And the main reason why is because I don't believe it's possible that he was on the 6th floor at the time the shots were fired. The most persuasive evidence to me to that end is the testimony of Arnold Rowland that he saw someone in the window with a gun at 12:15, combined with the testimony of Carolyn Arnold, who says that she saw Oswald at 12:25 on, I believe it was the 2nd floor. It might have been the 1st floor. I don't have encyclopedic memory, but I do have citations. So anyway, he couldn't have been on the 6th floor holding that gun that Arnold Rowland saw at 12:15 if he was with, seen by Carolyn Arnold at 12:25. And there's nobody that sees him there. The evidence on Oswald, when it comes down to it, at the end of that analysis about could Oswald have been in place, the biggest argument that Warren Report defenders still have is, yeah, but what about all the other stuff? And that's the point of the podcast, is let's take it one by one so that you can't say, what about all the other stuff? Let's go issue by issue. On the front, so then what was Oswald involved? Well, that gets to a different question. He acted really weird. Why did he get a gun and go to the Texas Theater? That's strange. A lot of people think Oswald was intelligence and he was doing what he was told. I'm not just going to make that claim without showing my receipts, but I will say that the purpose of season 2 of the podcast is to find out who was Lee Harvey Oswald really. And we get into that here in the next week or so. Today was the first episode back from a break we've been on in a while. Your second point, real quick, the shot from the front. The evidence on that is now here's the biggest counterpoint. Well, then who did it and where are they and why don't we have somebody in custody? Because they basically fired a shot in the middle of a bunch of people in daylight. How could that have happened? How did they possibly get away? And the answer is, let's break it down. You got Ed Hoffman, who's a deaf mute, and I'll do this quickly. I'm not going to do the whole thing. You have this guy who's a deaf mute who says he sees the whole thing. He sees a police officer fire a shot, break the gun down, toss it to a railroad man who has a tool bag, and he runs down the tracks. And then the police officer shows us his badge and starts talking to people who are rushing up the knoll. You got Lee Bowers, who says similar things, although not nearly as detailed, but he kind of sketches a vague similar outline to what Ed Hoffman said. And then you got 4 guys on the overpass who all said that they saw smoke come from out under the grassy knoll, under those trees, and then they ran over to go confront the guy. They didn't just hear it, they took action, they did something. And then the biggest evidence for the front shot, aside from the Zapruder film that shows Kennedy's body going back into the left, is the spatter analysis that you have 4 police officers that are trailing the vehicle, 2 on the right and 2 on the left in like a V formation. The ones that are back and to the left are hit with bone and blood and brain matter. The one that's the closest to Kennedy is totally covered in it. The one that's the farthest to the left he's got a shadow effect, so that he's only covered on the left side because his right side was guarded by the vehicle in front of him. Now, the two officers on the right, they had much less blood on them because there was a cloud from the headshot, but they had no bone and no brain. These other guys thought they were hit by bullets, but it was bone coming at them. So what does that tell you about the trajectory? And then obviously you have the big hole in the back of his head, which is the subject of JFK, what the doctor saw.
Yeah, definitely the clues are all there. Could this be resolved? I mean, I was surprised that that President Trump, because it would have caused quite a bit of trouble for the Democrats, did not do as he promised he would do in the closing days of his presidency, open all the files. I'm also a little surprised that the Democrats themselves, the leading Democrats themselves, appear not to want to know what happened to their glorious leader, their wisp of glory that was Camelot. Why would they not want to get to the bottom of this? And why didn't Trump close on the deal? And might he do so if he comes back?
Let's start with Trump. Did you hear what Judge Andrew Napolitano said that Trump told him?
No.
Have you heard?
No.
Napolitano said that he spoke to Trump, and Trump said, Judge, if you saw what I saw, you would know why we can't release these files. I mean, so it's, classic Trump vague language. But it sounds like he's saying it implicates the CIA. Who knows? I mean, I think Trump wanted to have a second term, and it was probably before the Department of Justice came after him. Perhaps his perspective would be different now, and he would have a he wouldn't act. He wouldn't worry about their threats because it's like, what else are they going to do to him? But maybe they'll show some of the Epstein material because he was on some of those planes, I think. But anyway, he says he just met him at a party one time. That may not be true. At any rate, on the Democrat side of thing, I mean, look, man, I'm not a political analyst, but it seems like to me the primary issue is just the QAnon of it all. The whole thing of like politically. Conspiracy theorist is certainly a pejorative that seems to be associated more with the right side of things, and Joe Rogan and folks like that. But at the end of the day, a lot, like you said earlier, a lot of conspiracies are true. It's I mean, the bottom line is, do you have facts? Do you have the data to back up what you're saying? And if you do, then we should analyze everything. I don't care if it's a crazy claim. We should look at everything. And if someone's saying crazy things, then provide factual data to win the argument, and then you can kind of move on. So that's my view.
You're a young man. Do you think you'll ever see the end of this? Do you think you'll ever know who killed JFK?
I think that we can get to the institutions and some of the the testimony that people have had over the years, and we can get close, I think, in terms of, are we going to know who the trigger man was, on the grassy knoll, if that's where he was. I don't know if we'll know that, because it could be some, there's a lot of different theories out there. I think that's going to be the hardest part, is once we get into trying to figure out, okay, so season 2 of my podcast is who was Oswald really? So we're going to go deep on Lee Harvey Oswald, his childhood, Marines, Russia, when New Orleans is huge, Dallas, did he go to Mexico City? Did he have intelligence ties? Why are all these people impersonating him all the time? That's pretty weird. And then season 3 down the road, we're going to look at, if not Oswald, then who? So I think that's the information, everybody. That's the spiciest stuff that people really like to talk about. So I want to show my work and lay it all out. And that's kind of what we're doing on Solving JFK.
Well, I'll be in your audience, Matt, and I'm sure a lot of our audience tonight will be also. Thanks very much for joining us on this auspicious anniversary.